In Matthew 24, Jesus gave us 4 basic facts about the tribulation. In verse 15, he says, "You will see the abomination of desolation stand in the holy place." Next, in verse 16, "Those in Judea will flee into the mountains." And this is when the tribulation will start, in verse 21. Then, in verses 29 through 31, he says that after this tribulation, the stars will fall, the sky will go dark, the Son of Man will be seen coming in the clouds, and the elect will be gathered in heaven. This is the major event that Bible prophecy is leading up to, which makes the tribulation timeline extremely important. So, let's chart this. First, Jesus says the abomination of desolation will stand in the holy place. Second, those in Judea will flee into the mountains, and this is when the tribulation will start. Then immediately after the tribulation, the stars will fall, and the elect will be gathered in heaven. The abomination of desolation is extremely important here because it's not just any abomination, it's specifically the one that Daniel talked about that will stand in a holy place. The book of Daniel contains 3 verses with the word abomination. In Daniel 9:27, there's a reference to the overspreading of many abominations. In Daniel 11:31, there's the placement of an abomination that makes desolate. And in Daniel 12:11, there's the setting up of an abomination that makes desolate. It's clear here that Jesus is referring to a specific abomination that will stand in a holy place, not multiple abominations. So Daniel 11 and 12 are the chapters that are relevant to this specific event. Daniel 11:31 says the abomination will be put in place by the king of the north. This is part of a very specific and complex timeline. It's absolutely necessary to completely decode Daniel chapter 11 in order to understand when and where the abomination was set up in verse 31. All of Daniel 11 was decoded in another video, and once that was completed, it became clear that the abomination of desolation refers to the Dome of the Rock set up on the Jerusalem Temple Mount from 685 to 691 CE. This is confirmed in Daniel 12. In verse 11, Daniel says the abomination will be set up 1,290 days after the daily activities are taken away. The daily activities, or sacrifice, was first taken away when Nebuchadnezzar invaded. This is explained in Daniel chapter 1. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar invaded. Jehoiakim's first year was 608 BC, which means his 3rd year was 606 BC. Calculating the years between BC and AD can be confusing, but this article from Sciencing explains. First, you add the 2 numbers from BC and AD, then subtract 1 because there was no actual year 0. So we add 606 BC to 685 CE, then subtract 1 to get 1,290 years. There were exactly 1,290 years from the first siege of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar until the king of the north began building the Dome of the Rock on the Jerusalem Temple Mount in 685 CE. This is confirmed in both Daniel 11 and 12. Then Daniel 12:12 tells us the blessed day will occur 1335 days after that, and we know days can also represent years, as explained in Ezekiel 4:6 and Numbers 14:34. The Dome of the Rock was set up from 685 to 691, so 1335 years after that lands in 2020 through 2026. That means the blessed day may come sometime in the next few years. But Daniel 12 gives another clue about the time of trouble. It says in verse 1 that there will be a time of trouble like no other, and at that time the people found in the book will be delivered. Then in verses 6 and 7, we're told this time of trouble will last for a time times and a half. This tells us the time of trouble or tribulation will last for a time times and half a time. So at first, it looks like this time of trouble in Daniel 12:1 is occurring along with the tribulation in Matthew 24. However, notice the tribulation in Matthew 24 is a tribulation of days. This is a very important clue because the Bible gives us 3 different phrases in reference to the time of trouble. First, there's a time times and half a time, described in Daniel 7, Daniel 12, and Revelation 12. Second, there are 1,260 days explained in Revelation 11 and 12. And third, there are 42 months in Revelation 11 and 13. All 3 of these time periods are equal to a time times and half a time. so it would seem possible that they refer to the same time period. But if they all refer to the same time period, then why are different phrases used for each one? We must research more to find out. Jesus tells us in Luke 12:37 and 38 that there will be at least 3 watches for the coming of the Lord. These 3 watches are explained in 3 chapters of his gospel. In Matthew 24, we're told to see or watch 3 things. First, see or watch the destruction of the temple in verses 1 and 2. Second, see or watch the abomination of desolation in verse 15. And third, see or watch the Son of Man coming in the clouds in verse 30. These exact 3 watches are also explained in Mark 13. First, see the temple destroyed in verse 2. Second, see the abomination in verse 14. And third, see the Son of Man coming in the clouds in verse 26. We can see how these 2 chapters run parallel to each other almost exactly, detailing what the 3 watches are and the basic timeline on which they occur. But in the 3rd chapter of this timeline, Luke 21, there's a change. It says the temple will be destroyed in verse 6, but does not mention the seeing here. Instead, the first seeing or watch occurs in verse 20, where it says, "You will see Jerusalem compassed with armies and desolated." We know from historical records that Jerusalem was surrounded by armies and desolated in 70 CE, along with the destruction of the temple. So the destruction of the temple and Jerusalem compassed with armies is one event. When you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, that's when Jerusalem will be desolated and the temple destroyed. That was the first watch, the destruction of the Jerusalem temple in 70 CE. The siege began on April 14th, 70 CE, and ended on September 8th, 70 CE, lasting 147 days, which is equal to a time times and half a time, one time being 42 days, times being 84 days, and half a time being 21 days. The second watch is explained in Matthew 24 and Mark 13. It's the setting up of the abomination of desolation in the holy place, the fleeing of the woman, and the tribulation of days. The budding of the fig tree occurred toward the end of this tribulation in 1948, and that was the second thing to see or watch in Luke 21, 29, and 30, and it occurred along with the second watch of Matthew 24 and Mark 13 during the Great Tribulation of Days. The third watch is the same across all 3 chapters, the seeing of the Son of Man in the clouds in Luke 21, 27, and the gathering of the elect in Matthew 24 and Mark 13, which occurs immediately after the tribulation of days. So Jesus told us there would be 3 watches, or 3 things to see. First, the destruction of the Jerusalem temple. Second, the abomination of desolation set up, followed by the tribulation of days, including the budding of the fig tree. And third, the coming of the Son of Man in the clouds, along with the falling stars and the gathering of the elect. So these 3 phrases in the Bible for the tribulation, the time times and half a time, the 1260 days, and the 42 months, may correspond somehow to the 3 watches. We have a watch of times, a watch of days, and a watch of months. Matthew 24 tells us the abomination starts the tribulation of the days. So the second watch is the watch of the days. This is confirmed in Revelation 12. In verse 6, it says the woman will flee into the wilderness for 1260 days. This is obviously a reference to Matthew 24, Judea fleeing into the mountains, and it adds 2 more details to that. First, a sign will appear in heaven before this fleeing, and second, the woman will stay in the wilderness for 1260 days and be fed there. This means that a sign should appear in heaven around the time that the abomination of desolation was set up, and the tribulation of the days is more specifically 1260 days. The sign occurred in 686 CE during the setting up of the Dome of the Rock. This is all explained in the Revelation 12 videos describing both the sign and also the timeline given in Revelation 12. We know Revelation chapter 12 is a timeline because the woman escapes twice, once before the dragon is cast to earth, and again after the dragon persecutes the woman on earth. So Revelation 12 clarifies that at the first fleeing, the woman will stay in the wilderness for 1260 days. This means the tribulation of the days in Matthew 24 is specifically 1260 days, and those days can also represent years. Then Revelation 12 tells us a war in the sky will occur, the dragon will be cast to the earth, a salvation will occur, an accuser will come, and the dragon will persecute the woman for a short time on the earth. There's much more depth to this explained in the Revelation 12 video, but for now we understand that this is happening during the tribulation of 1260 days or years. Then verse 14 tells us the woman escapes this dragon serpent by flight. This time she flies by the wings of an eagle to her place, where she is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. The time, times, and half a time is the time of trouble in Daniel 12. This is when it says the people in the book will be delivered. So when we match these timelines to Matthew 24, we can see that Daniel's time of trouble occurs at the end of the tribulation of days. Revelation 12:15 says this is when the flood happens, and Revelation 18:21 gives us the clue that the flood is caused by the asteroid hitting the sea. This is the falling of the stars in Matthew 24. So it's very clear that this occurs at the end of the tribulation of the days, along with the deliverance or escape by flight. This is also the start of the final 42 months in Revelation 13, when the beast blasphemes those in heaven. This clarifies the timeline in Daniel 12, Revelation 12, and Matthew 24. First, the daily was taken away. Then 1290 years later, the abomination of desolation set up along with the sign in heaven. Then those in Judea fled into the wilderness, and the tribulation of 1260 days or years started. When that tribulation of days or years ends, the final watch will occur, the falling of the stars, the Son of Man in heaven, all the people in the book delivered, taken by flight, and gathered together in heaven. Revelation 12 verse 17 adds that after the woman escapes at the end of the tribulation, during the final time, times, and half a time, the dragon will make war with the remnant who have the testimony. Revelation 11 gives us our next clues about this. There are actually 3 time periods given in chapter 11, 42 months, 1260 days, and 3.5 days. First, it says in verse 2 that the court of the temple of God will be given to the Gentiles, but this word Gentiles, number 1484, also means multitude. This is confirmed in Revelation 7, 9 through 17. It says a great multitude that cannot be counted of all nations, kindreds, and languages will stand before the throne. Revelation 4:2 tells us the throne is in heaven, so this multitude in Revelation 7 is in heaven. In verse 14 it says this multitude are those who will come out of the great tribulation, and in verse 17 it says they will be fed by the Lamb while they're in heaven. In Revelation 11 it tells us the multitude are walking the holy city for 42 months, and Revelation 21:2 says the holy city is in heaven. So this multitude in Revelation 11:2 is the same multitude in Revelation 7. They're at the throne in heaven, walking the holy city in heaven for 42 months. This is the place that the woman flies to at the end of the tribulation. 42 months is 3.5 years and can also equal a time, times, and half a time. Next, Revelation 11 tells us the 2 witnesses walk the great city for 1260 days. This chapter is not in chronological order, but it is clear what this great city is and when the 1260 days occur. The great city is Babylon the Great, as explained in Revelation 17, 3, 5, and 18. So the holy city is God's city in heaven, and the great city is Babylon's city on earth. The 2 witnesses are walking Babylon the Great for 1260 days or years. The Revelation 11 video goes into much more depth on this, but essentially, the Bible says the 2 witnesses are the 2 billion Christians and Jews. We're told the testimony is the testimony of Jesus Christ in Revelation 12:17. In Revelation 11:7, we're told the beast will make war with the 2 witnesses after they finish their testimony. In Revelation 12:17, we're told the dragon will make war with the remnant who have the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is absolutely clear that the 2 witnesses are the remnant, and the word remnant literally means left behind. Luke 17:29 through 37 tells us that when the Son of Man is revealed, some will be taken and others left. The remnant are those left behind. They're not all Christians and Jews, but definitely a large portion of them. Jesus explains this in Matthew 22. After explaining why the remnant will be left behind, he says in verse 14 that many are called but few are chosen. So of the ones that are called, most are the remnant, but not all. The Bible says they're not saved because, among other things, they worship the beast, they're murderers, they persecute the real truth seekers, and their testimony is false. This is explained all throughout the Bible in the letters of Paul, the writings of Jesus, telling them never to call him Christ, etc. The false testimony of Jesus Christ is actually based upon an ancient Egyptian religion, which is why Babylon the Great is also called Egypt in the Bible. Revelation 11:7-9 says the beast will kill those with this testimony, and their dead bodies will lie throughout Babylon the Great for 3.5 days. This is why the Bible advises to come out of Babylon. The Bible tells us days can also represent years, so these 3.5 days in Revelation 11 can also refer to a 3.5-year period, which is a 42-month period, and also a time times and half a time. So there are 3 watches in which a tribulation or time of trouble occurs. First, the destruction of Jerusalem. Second, the 1260 years following the abomination of desolation. And third, the final time of trouble that starts when the asteroid hits. In order to isolate exactly when the tribulation of days occurs, we must know what the abomination of desolation is, which requires the decoding of Daniel 11, and we must know what the sign of Revelation 12 is and when it occurred. From there, everything else falls into place. The abomination of desolation was set up between 685 to 691 CE, and the sign of Revelation 12 occurred in 686. Those in Judea fled starting in 685 and continued fleeing for at least a generation. This gives 1 generation as the possible start of the tribulation, and 1 generation as the possible end. This gives a window for the end of the tribulation from 1945 to 2045. You may notice that the start of this end window, 1945, was the year World War II ended. World War II was the first war fought in the sky, and in 1945 specifically, the Jews were released from the Nazi concentration camps. Those 2 things are elaborated upon in chapter 12. The budding of the fig tree that Jesus told us to watch for occurred 2 years later with the creation of Israel. We are currently in the window for the end of the second time of trouble, the tribulation of days. The multitude is being persecuted by the dragon on earth now. The 2 witnesses are walking Babylon the Great, with the Egyptian testimony of Jesus Christ now. The saints are now in the hand of the little horn. That's possibly a 77-year period, and the fulfillments of Daniel 9 appear to have started in 1948, which means that should be complete by 2025. The 3rd watch will be the asteroid impact, the falling of the stars, the darkening of the sky, the Son of Man in heaven, and a rescue of the multitude of all tribes and nations. And it looks like it's coming very, very soon. For more information, please see indigoflower.net or the playlist Bible's Countdown to the Meteorite and Rescue. Thank you so much to those who make this work possible. If you like this, please consider providing support. I hope you're doing well, and I'll talk to you again soon.